Press the bell icon on the YouTube app to never miss a video from News Laundry.
Hello and welcome to News Laundry Interviews. Today we're privileged to have with us the founder of MKSS, the Majdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, former IAS officer and a hero for many activists and an inspiration for many, including myself. I'd like to put a disclaimer out there that I have, when I was flirting with activism, worked under Aruna Roy's leadership between 2003-2007 during the RTI movement. We'll discuss that in this interview. But Aruna Roy, along with MKSS, as I said, has come out with the story, the RTI story, a book, the RTI story, Power to the People. Welcome, ma'am. Pleasure having you here.
Nice to be here.
So, regarding the book, I have not read the whole thing, but I have read much of it in the last couple of days. It's extremely detailed of how the RT movement started. In fact, it starts off from the hunger strike for minimum wage in Rajasthan. And you have said that activism doesn't leave you much time for documenting information, and it gets left behind because of the immediacy of action, which is what activists do. Have you put this book together as an academic study for future generations to understand how such a transformative act can come from the groundswell, or are you hoping that this becomes a course book because it is very heavy and intense? What is your aim of actually writing it?
Actually, it is neither. The end use is not what was important. Mm-hmm. In terms of becoming a course book or a handbook for activists, these are what I would call the fallouts of this story. The basic intent was to write a narrative that would bring the truth of our lives into the public domain. And since we are in an era of narratives pouring out of every crevice and all kinds of distortions to history and facts, this is born out of documents and other records collected by the MKSS and other organizations associated with us from the period that we start with, the 80s, the mid and late 80s. It is true that we don't keep records, but the MKSS did keep records. Mm-hmm. And as its main record keeper, I had a huge task, which was unpleasant most of the time because everyone thought I was impinging on important time by insisting that they do clerical work, mm-hmm. like filing papers, filing parchas, making quite sure that copies were always filed away, that, even petitions, which were very important, of course, everyone understood. But why should a parcha be filed, or why should something? And I got really into a flap if we didn't have one copy of something available with us. I've always been very intrigued by the books I've read, where beginning with Kosambi, there has been a view of history, that history is written by people who are powerful.
Is it?
It is mostly written by the power. They assign historical books, whether it's democracy or whether anybody else, it's that. People who really create the history, who are part of real democracy, and who create movements. You didn't mention the RTI when you introduced me, but it's the RTI that's given birth to our larger presence. Yeah. So anyway, so that whole story somewhere had to be told and verified with data, with facts. That's why all these documents, because I don't want anyone to say it's a figment of our imagination. It is one perspective of it. I'm sure many other things happened simultaneously in other states or other places. I'm not denying that. We are not denying that. Sure. But we are saying that for us who created the National Campaign for People's Right to Information, and then it became a voice of multiple organizations, got very many people on the platform, got people from all over India. That was the second phase for us. The first phase was the actual struggle at the grassroots.
So what Mr. Roy just mentioned, that's the NCPRI, which was an organization that was, I would use the word lobbying, and I will come to that later, for the RTI Act.
It was an organization which was the National Campaign for People's Right to Information, सूचना का अधिकार का जन अभियान, जन अधिकार का अभियान, made by Prabhash Joshi, Ajit Bhattacharya ji, Kuldeep Nayyar, S.R. Shankaran and all these people, Harsh Mandar, Bharat Dogra, Shekhar Singh, many people who got together and felt that the legislation was critically important. And then after the Biawar Dharna in 96, it was born in Delhi.
Okay, this book does actually tell lots of that, how the organization came about and what it did. But I'd like to start off with the Right to Information Act. You have described in this book, and several people have described it, and that's why I got involved in 2002, because I did think this is one of the most important acts. Although I am more cynical now, and I'd come to that a little later and ask you some questions about that. You've said it is a legislation that has arguably changed the contours of democratic governance in India. Why is this act such a big deal that it's often described as the biggest, most important legislation since independence? Could you just explain?
I think many voices should explain it, but point is that 60 to 80 lakhs of people apply for information every year in this country. It's the most used act anywhere in the world. Right to information laws, if you take them, most heavily used in India. And there are people in Manipur, in Kashmir, you go to Punjab, you go to South India, who don't know us, don't know anything, don't know background, don't know how the law was made, etc. But everyone knows RTI.
Right.
So that those three words, alphabets, have become an acronym of a right to question the government. It has really legitimized questioning. And that's why so many people have lost their lives. Because the other side, in a feudal society, in an overhang with colonial, with a strong colonial overhang, the fact that you question people itself has been looked at with deep suspicion. Before the RTI came, just a small example, but it goes a long way. I went to the panchayat and say, give me information. They would probably say, you are an anti-national, you're obstructing our work and duty, and promptly go to the police station and lodge an FIR. Today, if I go with an RTI application, they dodge me at worst.
They'll still try to avoid it, but they can't refuse you outright.
No, they cannot deny me the right to question.
Sure.
So it has led to questioning of very many movements in people with legitimacy. They're always questioned, but now with legitimacy, whether it's women asking for medical reports for rape cases, or whether it's in the Gujarat genocide, people going and asking for copies of police reports, or whether it's in Kashmir, Toshi Maidan being reclaimed from the army by a whole lot of people who said you can't have a firing range in the middle of a in habitation, or whether it is Manipur, with a...
Or whether it is a pavement outside my house.
So many.
But I mean, I'll come to, has it achieved what we all hoped it would? I'll come to that later. But while I see that the book starts off with, in Bhim, in Rajasthan, the National RTI Act came out in 2005 under UPA 1 when you were part of the National Advisory Council. Now, while I understand that the Groundswell was a people's movement, and again, full disclosure, I was part of it, so I'm, I guess, biased. But I do believe, finally, the National Act was passed because of your proximity to Sonia Gandhi through the NAC. Do you genuinely believe, had it not been for you being able to push Sonia Gandhi to put this? Because I know for a fact that the first draft that was created was killed by Manmohan Singh and his bureaucrats. They made 86 odd changes, if I remember correctly. Then that was rejected, then it was sent back. Again, they made changes, saying the discretion was left to the bureaucrat that if he finds it unnecessary or under, whatever, that he can refuse the RTI. And then finally, Sonia Gandhi pushed it through. How much of the National Act, and I'll come to the states later, was because of the people's movement, and how much of it was because you could lobby Sonia Gandhi?
That's why the story is only of the MKs. We are very modest. We are not talking about India, first of all. That is very clear. So I think I'll give you my opinion, but it's not part of the book.
Well,
and it's not part of the book because we gave a tempo full of documents to the National Nehru Memorial Museum and Library because we didn't think we were the rightful owners of those documents. And I have been trying the last 2 years to access those documents, and I haven't been able to. So since I could not get those documents, I have not written about it. One day it will be written about, the detailing of it. But here I'm really talking of people. I would really rather talk, those things that you mentioned have been talked about, discussed, written about, everything. But the people have been hardly discussed. I mean, even Delhi people who are contributory to it, we don't know what the people said and did much.
Okay.
We know what about the leaders said and did much. So actually I'm interested in this book, in looking at what people said and did. For instance, I would be interested in seeing how the Janavad public hearing really contributed to penalty being argued much more vociferously in the making of the law than anything else.
Okay,
because despite the Rajasthan Act giving us the right to information, access information, it didn't have a penalty. So in Janavad, for 1 year, despite Chief Minister, Chief Secretary, everyone saying information must be given, a Gram Sevak could just nullify the whole thing by running away with documents and getting a stay. So I'm more interested in this book.
I understand that, but like this book, it says power to the people, and it kind of does put forward the thesis that a people's movement can achieve a lot, and I agree it can. And I would happily discuss much of what is in this book, but I think what I asked is an important part of it, because I mean it's always good to, while it's important to have the optimism to have a people's groundswell to
I'm coming
lobby.
to it. I'm coming to it.
Realistically, how much of that?
I'm coming to it. I'm saying that my focus is on that in this book.
I understand that.
I think that without this movement, the National Common Minimum Program would not have got defined. This movement gave birth to the NCPRI. It also dialogued, debated, and engaged with political parties. The NCPRI created a whole body of very powerful people who went and advocated and engaged with government in Delhi, but their reliability and their veracity and their probity depended on what happened at the grassroots, how many people were actually looking at records, whether it was Delhi or whether it was Goa or whether it was Tamil Nadu or Rajasthan. But about Rajasthan I know best, so I've written about it. So what kind of dialogue took place strengthened the political arguments here. So the groundswell, the fact that Behru Singh was shaken by the demand for transparency and accountability in Rajasthan, spread its message to other political parties as well. So engaging with Congress and the left and many other political parties became possible, because then they listened to us. So without a groundswell, no political party listens to anybody. Now the National Common Minimum Program was UPA 1's statement, in which it was largely Congress, but there was also the left, and they made a promise of an RTI Act. So the creation of the NAC was because the NAC was then created to ensure that the NCP, the National Common Minimum Program, was implemented. Now for us, therefore, it was transparency in terms and accountability of political promises. So our going into the NAC was not seeking any closeness or proximity to power, but being true to our own logic, because we kept saying that engaging and giving prominence to people's voices is important in politics, number one. Number two, we kept saying that our opinions should be taken in the process of the policy being made, not after it's fashioned and ask for comments and reactions. And that there was such an engagement possible and a platform was created. Before I actually joined the NAC, I went to all the movements I was part of, to the NAPM, to the NCPRI, and wanted to know whether they mandated my going in or not. And it's after receiving that mandate that I joined the NAC.
Fair enough.
And it is true that Mrs. Gandhi's
personal intervention.
Not personal intervention, a commitment to the act.
Yeah, but hers. I mean, her Prime Minister did all he could.
Hers was critical, and that's been written about, talked about, and that will be another set of papers and another document which will come out, which will talk about the role of political parties, power, etc. But this is about how people at the grassroots managed to convey this to the larger, because without their groundswell and without this articulation, it wouldn't have been possible.
Sure, I understand
that.
that.
Even in the standing committee, the film that Anurag Singh made on a public hearing, and the level of cheating that takes place, which is common, everybody knows about it. But that being brought into focus and shown to the standing committee made an impact.
Okay,
So that's all I'm saying. It's not that we are not claiming that we were unique in terms of getting that
of course,
information,
no, that's-
but that process was delineated.
I'm just saying, my thesis is that while of course groundswells are important, the Lokpal being a case in point, just a groundswell by itself need not make something happen.
Certainly not.
I mean,
This book
you
is
have
tracing.
to have someone in power who you can, and I don't think proximity to power is a bad thing if it's used for the right reasons. I mean, we all want to
proximity to power
influence
is all
governance.
very well.
So
I'm not saying that it's not needed. The book argues that engaging with political power structures is important. It argues that political parties are important. It argues that a representative politics is important. But what is not written about and what is not talked about is the groundswell.
Because that plays
That's all the argument I'm making. I'm
Sure.
not disagreeing with you. I'm saying that this book is not about that. Its
I
book is
understand
about
that.
the other side.
Now, we know how the RTI Act came about. There was a groundswell, there were amendments, there were dharnas, a jantar mantar. But before the RTI Act 2005, it had already been implemented in Rajasthan,
The
of course,
state acts,
which was...
First it was Tamil Nadu, then it was Goa, then it was Rajasthan, then it was Maharashtra, then it was Delhi, then it was Assam. I mean, many states had already got it. That was, and in this book I mentioned that because there were state acts, our arguments were stronger. No, arguments were stronger because we had best case.
And
we also had experiences, that's why I said Janavad in Rajasthan after the act. For example, there were many such.
Now just tell me, all these which played out in different parts of the country, what was uniquely similar in all of them and what was uniquely different to each, in getting it
See,
executed?
when the NCPRI drafted its first law, which was 96-97, done by the Press Council of India, Justice Sawant chaired actually this meeting, and with a series of very important meetings with people who knew how to make good laws, with constant reference to people who wanted to use the law. There was this very interesting dialectic. So the law was fashioned. So Kavita, Nikhil and I and many others went from state to state with a draft copy of the law. We met politicians, we met intellectuals, we met people, and we left a copy of the draft with people. So we went to Maharashtra, went to Goa, went to Tamil Nadu, went to several other states.
So it was the same set of people who actually were working in different states?
No. Please don't jump the gun. We went around and left the draft. In Tamil Nadu, with many organizations, local people, local politicians, whoever was interested.
Right.
So in Tamil Nadu, the Madras Institute of Development Studies, along with S. Guhan, who's an ex-IAS officer, took it up. S. Guhan was advisor to Karunanidhi at that time. So he said, I will look at this act. He took it in Madras. Tamil Nadu Act was terrible. It had 26 exceptions. And ultimately it gave you nothing. In Goa, a group of journalists took it up. And they then took up the law and they fashioned it. It was a much better act. Then, of course, in Rajasthan, it was a total campaign with everybody involved.
Right.
And in Maharashtra also, the first law was taken up by a lot of people. Then Anna Stat and hunger strike and whatever it is to improve it. And Madhav Godbole actually made the second, drafted the second version of the act there and tried to remove all the...
So in every state it kind of improved, the draft improved?
Improved
or you knew what battles were coming?
But yes, so different issues were highlighted everywhere. But in the middle of all this, 2002, because of pressure from the Supreme Court, very reluctantly the NDA passed its act. Freedom of Information Act, whereas we all wanted a Right to Information Act. The nomenclature was also very interesting because we get freedom of right to expression in the Constitution. We wanted the right to know. So anyway, in that, when they passed the law, we kept going to them saying whatever law, it was a very weak law. So we said whatever law you passed, let's have it. They didn't notify it. Until and unless a law is notified in the Gazette, it's useless. And we got very, very typical answers. रुके रहो 4 साल में हो जाएगा 5 साल में हो जाएगा जब होगा तब होगा and the British took so long and the falana took so long, so you wait for however. And in the middle, the UPA won unexpectedly or expectedly and produced the NCMP and gave an assurance of a better Right to Information Act.
Right.
So then the process that you delineate began, and then, we looking at the Act and changing it and so on and so forth. Finally, there were 154 amendments
Right.
in the standing committee to the law, and that's what we see today. Then, of course, there were retractions and protractions and so on, all of that.
Okay, now I want to come to the bit where you said that now we have a right to know. It is the most used act, and while I have seen a lot of wonderful stories emerge from it, and the kind of success stories emerge from it, there is this worrying bit of data, which is that, and this is a 217 April report. This is a Central Information Commission, and for our audience, Central Information sits in Delhi. They are State Information Commission, so there's a Chief Information Commissioner of the state, and then the central one, who was Wajahat Habibullah when I was part of this entire thing. The pendency, it has to clear almost 5,500 cases in the next 6 months, which works out 100 cases a month, and the backlog would take 3 years to clear, they're saying. Now, for an act that is so young, to have already reached this level of pendency, you find that worrying. You find that what you fought for and you've given much of your life for, as have many other people, and some quite literally have given their life for it, is in many parts of the country, I'm not saying all, like it works in many parts of Delhi, but in many other parts of the country, it doesn't work. The PM doesn't show us his degree. You can file all the RTIs you want, and that's just one case. There are many others. Is this what you fought for?
I fought not only for the Commission's slice of 5 to 6% of the cases being dealt with there. I fought for the 90%, which is being answered at the level of the PIO and the Appellate Authority. Let's remember that there are, let me divide in my new categorization three aspects of the RTI law. One is the energy of people and the use of this law at the grassroots. And we're the cutting edge. We're not getting pensions, not getting rations. We just got 1.25 lakh names reinstated after they struck off 3 lakh names on the pension list. All this was done through RTI. So that is also possible.
Sure.
So what I'm saying is the dialogue with government and with APIOs, PIOs, using information to access real facts, confront them, is all going on. A small percentage does come to the commissions. So let me divide that there is the use of the law by what I call the people, where energy levels are very high. Even now, in spite of deaths, in spite of all of that, their energy levels are high because this is the only tool they have now to demand anything at all with legitimacy. So that lives. Then let me talk about the mechanisms of it, which is the PIOs, APIOs, the commissions, the commissioners, all of that. That, because the management of it still lies within the bureaucracy, in the sense that even the commission, which is supposed to be independent, the appointment to the commission is by the government. So what we are doing there is going back to a similar relationship with the powers that be, despite the fact that we have a very wonderful act, because the controls still lie with the system. With the bureaucrat, with the politician,
Sure.
Because the member of the opposition, the chief, the prime minister, and the head of and one cabinet minister look after this, and in the states it's a different kind of a combination, same set. They are not wanting to do anything.
Sure.
And now, in the increasing political climate of India today, they are trying to brazen it out by damning the Act, by damning the rights-based legislations, just denying everything. No, but that all the more reason why we need another movement now to take it up. And this is going to be a very important critical time when we face the government with saying that you just have to do it. It's the law. You can't say it's rights-based legislations, it's the UPA. So UPA, no BJP, no communist, unanimously passed in parliament. It's an Indian law.
Yeah. No,
so that's the line we'll have to take, and I think with them. And the third thing is the politics of it. That electoral bonds issue, the fact that now they can receive foreign money and not be answerable for it. What happened when in the last years of the UPA, what they did with the law. How it was a ruling of the CIC that political parties would come under the law. What's happened. It's gone into limbo. And I think the politics of the law, I mean, which is what I, rough and ready definition, that we must now engage with the politics. So no longer important just to engage with mechanics of the law. We'll have to go beyond that. What happened to my application will and always be important. Yes, we must deal with it, but a side of it must be what is happening to the larger areas, including the denial of right to freedom of expression.
Does forming a political party include engaging with the political system of the country? Would you ever consider that in Rajasthan?
It's implementing the system. That's why Delhi government should, if it's not done it already, go ahead and implement every aspect of the RTI law.
No, would you ever consider?
I won't.
Why not?
I've dealt with it long ago. I'm happier where I am.
As a bureaucrat?
I'm very happy where I am. As a bureaucrat?
No, as a bureaucrat. You say you've dealt with it long ago.
No, I've dealt with the issue long ago.
Okay.
And I'm happiest when I'm out of these rigid systems. I like my freedom of operating and not having to compromise on any ethical issue because of circumstances.
Which is inevitable in politics.
To some degree, yes.
Absolutely.
Some degree, yes. And I don't want to.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you have to have the ideologues and you have to have those who do the rest. Okay, I have another question regarding in this book also in Rajasthan, when there was the first hunger strike for minimum wage, and then there were subsequent hunger strikes for various reasons, culminating up to Anna's hunger strike for a Lokpal. The hunger strike is a very important tool in the people's movements here.
No, not in my book.
You
haven't read through. I'll tell you what.
In the first alternate books that I have read, I'll quote the ones that are...
Wait. You haven't read it through. Just a moment. We did 2 hunger strikes only, okay? After the second hunger strike, the first hunger strike, we were duped and lifted in 90.
After being given an assurance.
Yeah. So nothing happened. In 92, the second hunger strike, 91, we sat and government stopped 100 crores of GRY funds, Government of India to Government of Rajasthan, because of non-payment of minimum wages. We won it. Can you imagine doing a hunger strike for everything? So we sat down and we said, no more hunger strikes. MKSS has never done hunger strikes after that second one. We decided to go in for the public hearings. That's when the public hearing became the tool for demanding justice in front of everybody, where we sat a panel down and that panel decided, not the government. Government could come and talk and express its point of view with absolute freedom with no impingement. But the decision would not be taken by people within the government. It will be taken by a panel of people with integrity and probity from public life.
Okay, now I get that other than those 2 hunger strikes, MKSS hasn't done any, but in the entire RTI movement, and other than the MKSS aspect, while the MKSS aspect and what's in this book is one part of the RTI movement, there is another part as well, that all of it has not been included in the book. Now that part did have hunger strikes.
Only
what I'm saying is,
2 very prominent hunger strikes. One was Anna Hazare's hunger strike and the other was Sandeep Pandey's hunger strike.
And Anna's, other than this one here, even in Maharashtra,
but Anna's hunger strikes, you can't deal with another person's values and rights. Neda also goes into the whole system of hunger strikes. We argue with them all the time.
But as a tool, you don't think it is...
I think it's self-defeating in many ways, because as the health deteriorates, which is what happened to us, you're more and more desperate for a decision, and you are parlaying with people whom you really don't respect, saying, please give it. If they had given it, there would have been no hunger strike. Now, why are we going back to them? It's a kind of contradiction, So that's why we feel hunger strikes don't deliver. And while it is but it also assumes that the person on the other side is humane. It assumes that there is justice on the other side, where the degree of democratic respect for other people's lives. We're dealing with a system that's callous anyway.
Right.
And when we were sitting on the first hunger strike, the MLA of our district, of our area, not the district, of our particular area, came and said, "Marne do salon ko." That's I don't give galis, but he said,
you're quoting.
I'm quoting him, कि इनको मरने दो, क्योंकि क्या फर्क पड़ेगा? 17 लोग मर जाएंगे तो मर जाएंगे. So that's the attitude. Now it was different when Gandhiji sat on a hunger strike. There is degree of accountability expressed at least by the top civil servants, maybe. I didn't live in those times, so I can only assume. But he was not allowed to die. But even with Medha, when she was 20 days into a hunger strike, I know how terribly ill I was. And I couldn't eat, not because I was on a hunger strike, but even the act of eating was like a sin, when somebody, a comrade of yours is in such a condition.
Yeah.
So we deplete the energies of a group of people.
So you're saying it doesn't serve the purpose. Now,
I feel
another tool that is, the tools typically the ones used are, one is of course the yatras that you take out. One is of course the Jansunwais. Now the yatras don't require any other kind of cooperation from authorities or anybody else, but the Jansunwais do. So if the establishment or the government doesn't want to suno, how does the Jansunwai happen? When is the last time? I've attended a few Jansunwais.
I'll tell you the difference between...
I'll just finish. I've attended a few Jansunwais and I've seen some of them are effective. But I also know that I don't think there's been a Jansunwai of any consequence that I'm aware of, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the last 10 years or so. Now with power becoming a lot more, like you said, arrogant and dismissive of, kar lo jo karna hai. If they don't come for a Jansunwai, how can you still use it as a tool?
Now the Jansunwai, we have a classification. In this book again, it's made clearer as you go on. A Jansunwai is a people's hearing.
Right.
So in the people's hearing, or a public hearing, you get in a set of people as panelists who are not the government. So the report that finally comes out of that public hearing is mandated by people who are serious and senior. And therefore, the government, if it's not present, will have to take some note of it. And it depends on how you frame it, how you lobby, and so on and so forth. There are lots of strategies. It's just not the public hearing, is not an end in itself, number one. The second thing is what emerged from it, which was the social audit, and which is there also in this book to some degree, was where the government not only mandates it, but has to be part of it. So that evolved with the RTI in terms of a tool. And now the CAG has also accepted that the social audit process is important in the overall audit process for performance audit, for public audit.
Is it still happening anywhere? Are you aware of any social?
Yeah, it happens. Of course it happens, and it's effective, where government has to be present.
Where, which is the last
for instance,
one that you're aware of?
In Rajasthan, we have not had the social audit directorate set up because they are so scared. The moment you set up the social audit directorate, you expose yourself. So we've been fighting for the social audit directorate to be set up. But in Andhra, for instance, it has been there since the NREGA began. And they have recovered crores of rupees from people. And they have been very effective. Government has taken a position and has been forced to take a position. And people have returned the money. And it's happening in various other parts. In Sikkim, for instance, it's very, very good. So in some parts of Himachal Pradesh, it's very good. So it works. The point is, the trouble is, it's your problem and mine, that any country that runs has to run with the bureaucracy. You can't have no bureaucracy and have governance. And the bureaucracy is the most difficult to turn around. Somehow we have to turn it around.
Why is that? Why are they the most difficult to turn around? Because lack of accountability, because such complicated procedures to remove a bureaucrat?
No, it's not so simple as that. Let's take an overarching issue because I don't think we have time. It's status quoist. Let me say it that way. And it's an amazing set of people. Today, one party comes to power and they say, oh, this is a fantastic program. They'll all say it's a fantastic program. In 2 days, the party changes, a new party takes power and they'll say it's a terrible program. They'll all go like a pack of cards on the other side and say it's a terrible program. So
they're survivors.
They're survivors of the wrong sort.
Right.
So they have to have a constitutional tethering about which the people have to finally force them into. And their RTI is important because you say it's a rule or a law, you have to work within the mandate of that. You cannot go beyond that, no matter who tells you, whether I tell you, or X tells you, or Y tells you, the law will have to run its course. So it's a great political tool for education and we'll have to do it. It'll take time.
We have very little time because we're already 30 minutes. So I have 2 questions left and I have to ask those before I go because I can't not. One is, like you said, that bureaucrats, they have a propensity, the natural tendency, like plants grow towards light, is status quoism and survival. Would you say an activist's propensity is combat? Which is why even when activists sit together, they end up combating each other often. there's just such a tendency, and I'm saying this from experience of having observed many activists work, different activists come together. I was often amazed at conflicts that, at least as a much younger and outside person, which were needless. But what I understood was like a bureaucrat, when you walk into, I don't know what you were like when you walk into a bureaucrat's office, he looks at you like you're vermin. And he makes you feel that I own you, I can crush your life how I want, and I've dealt with them. Activists just end up clashing. Do you think it's because of the daily battle they fight that becomes their second nature?
I don't agree with you at all. I think that adversarial attitudes to misuse of power is very different from camaraderie. I've lived a long life now, as you can see from the color of my hair, which is not dyed. And in this life, I have amazing companionships, friendships, and so much solidarity with so many people who are activists. But we have the freedom to express a different opinion and the courtesy to allow the others to have their opinion. Some of us don't, but most of us do. I don't agree in toto with Medha. She doesn't agree in toto with me. Kamla Bhasin is a very good friend. Maybe we have areas in which we don't agree. I have a whole heap of very good friends. Prashant, with whom I don't fully agree on him, maybe on many things. Trilochan Shastri, with whom I agree largely. We all have areas of disagreement, but we've been together. So I think it's a misnomer that we are aggressive with each other, but we are fully honest, outspoken, and sometimes we think it's better to clear the air than to leave it buried in so-called civility when we are together. There's contestation, but I don't think, in my personal life, I don't. There are some people with whom values fall apart, and then you part company. But otherwise, so long as values remain the same and principles remain the same, and a certain basic integrity, you carry on.
So one name absent in the list that you mentioned was Arvind Kejriwal. Would you not consider him someone who you agree and disagree with, or are you disappointed with what has emerged of the Aam Aadmi Party? What is your take on that? Because you have worked very closely with him during the RTI movement. Actually,
the projection of our closeness is exaggerated. Yes, we did work together a lot, and Nikhil and he worked together more than I worked with him.
Sure.
We did work together, and he had a contribution to make, which nobody's denying.
Which is
but
in this
the
book
moment
as well.
he steps into politics, then he makes a choice. So I see him like I would see other political parties. I've written to him many times. I've got no replies. So even for this.
But do you think that's true for the Swaraj Abhiyan party as well, Prashant's party?
I don't want to compare the two. We've been talking to them and they talk to us, and I don't know some issues on which we are together. They are not in power,
We'll
so
see how that
it
emerges.
makes a difference. But nevertheless, I've written many letters to him as the Chief Minister, especially when he became Chief Minister, asking him to guarantee that Jantar Mantar is not only kept as a public space. With Baba Adav and I signed saying that please guarantee that this public space exists, provide us some minimum facilities like toilets and public spaces. I've been writing wherever there's an issue, but I've got no response from him so far. So this question should also be asked him, I think, as to why he feels that minimum courtesies of replies don't come my way. We've also invited him to this launch.
Right.
Let's see if he comes. We have not been discourteous, but in a sense, I am no longer in Delhi. I don't come so often to Delhi anyway. I'm looking at many other aspects of my life, and I do travel a lot. But I'm traveling in India and not coming to Delhi so much.
So if you're at all interested in people's movements or RTI or local self-governance, of tools of making things happen, I think this is a good book to pick up. It's called the RTI story, but it includes more than just RTI.
Actually, we called it Power to the People, and our publisher decided that it should be called the RTI story.
Because it's a better sell, RTI, because the first bit doesn't have the RTI aspect. That comes in a little later. One last question, after which I'll let you go. We got the RTI, and you said it's empowered people significantly. I think it's empowered political parties, because when the Adarsh scam was a fallout of an RTI by an activist in Maharashtra. The CWG game scam, whether how much toiletry was bought for. But Kalmadi is still out. I haven't seen any convictions on Sheela governments and their involvement. But what it did help was it helped one political party use that information against another, but it didn't contribute to justice in any way. So now the information is out. Okay, there were improprieties, there were
I get that.
inconsistencies. So you think we need another step?
The answer to that is that the Lokpal bill must be passed. The answer to that is that the judicial accountability bill must be passed. The answer to that is the grievance redress must be passed. The whistleblowers bill must be passed in Parliament. And accountability is not covered by the RTI law. It's just transparency. No,
right.
Transparency. Let's not call it information.
Right.
It's transparency. And it's tried to do as much as it could do with transparency. Websites are there in place. MORD website was very good. It's been diluted a bit, but it's still very good. So transparency it guaranteed. Accountability, we need the second set of laws. Our only disagreement with the India Against Corruption was that we didn't want one powerful institution again becoming susceptible to corruption of the same sort. We wanted it divided over 4 institutions. That was the only difference. But of course we need accountability.
All right. Thank you. Good luck in all your future battles, and thank you for your past ones.
Thank you.
Pleasure.